This zealot I actually think doesn't even need to be made. You can cut back on the zealots after you have like your secure amount of zealots, and just get your gas up and just live in the luxurious world of many centuries. And of course, we're getting our cybernetics core. And always double check yourself. I do this all the time, where I will have a timing in my head, and I will, every single game, I'll just make sure that that was there. And this is one of those reasons why I advocate a Starcraft notebook. Because I've actually had a lot of people who have said, you know, what do you write in your Starcraft notebook? And it's just like, well, anything. It doesn't really matter. Organize it however you want, but as long as it's written down so you have a reference, you'll be surprised at how much stuff goes on in StarCraft games. It makes it kind of hard to keep up with all the time. So, for instance, what timing did we just say? Well, with a 10 gate against a 12 pool style, we should have our opponent's layer finishing around the time our warp gate is almost done. So this is what I'm going to be doing in this game. I'm going to be looking at this warp gate tech and see, I'm not even going to go to Sen's base yet. I'm going to resist. I'm going to give myself the tease and keep coming back to this core to see if that timing is actually there. Interesting choice by White-rA to get this robotics facility up. This is really the first big deviation that we have seen, you know, except for like the map being completely different. Still very early 4 gas. Love that early stalker to zap these overlords a little bit. I'm going to keep poking around at these at the cybernetics core. But okay, yeah, look, White-rA, same basic structure. The ordering is a little different. It's, in the first game, it was get a lot of warp gates and gateways, then get a robotics facility. In this game, it's get a robotics facility, and then get a lot of warp gates. And as we can see, popping right out is an observer to get a perfect sense of what's going on. Now let's just check our warp gate. Okay, warp gate's almost done. And hey, look, the layer is actually even later. Okay, cool. So I would even go so far as to say that this timing is pretty damn decent. Because in this game, we held off a Zergling rush. It makes sense that it would be delayed a little bit, but our timing is pretty good. Right when this warp gate finishes, we know that Sen's lair will be finishing. And here comes an Immortal and a Robotics Bay and the +1 upgrade, and what we are going to be seeing thrown down here any second is that Twilight Council to get that ever-critical +2 upgrade. So here we have some gateways. They're being morphed into warp gates now. Wouldn't be surprised if the first set of units out of them were sentries. So let us see if that pans out. I would love to see if that's the case, because we were a little bit lower on sentries this game when compared to last game. Good building placement, nice big arc, nice little nest for our units to hang out in. We'll come back and check up on the sentries. Yep, there's the Twilight Council going down. Now, we're really starting to see the big difference between this game and last game. The fact that Sen really had a much easier time getting this hatchery up, because the difference between these maps is that Zerg gets to expand away from you. And as Protoss, you also have to expand away from Zerg. Protoss needs to be setting up this expo instead of something closer. I mean, theoretically, we could set up this one that might actually be a little bit safer. As weird as that sounds, the Central Gold expansion might be a little bit safer because it closes down the attack paths. So yeah, we did have White-rA make some sentries. And what happens right when +1's done? Look at +2 lined up immediately. And here's the Colossus. Here's the extended thermal lance. Sick. 4 warp gates. Twilight Council. Fast +2. Colossus. Robotics Bay. Clean amount of money. Very clean timing. Very cool. Even when we snuck in an Immortal, timing still worked out very similarly. And what we're going to start seeing right now is that White-rA begins to have a lot of trouble once this expansion goes down. This is the trouble time for White-rA, because there's all this vulnerability in the main. You know, there's no cannons here still. What do we see going down in Sen land? Well, he will actually be researching the ventral sacks in a little bit. In the meantime, he's macroing like crazy. These Zerglings spotting everything that's up. More Chrono Boost being spent. Look at how good White-rA is about his Chrono Boost. He's even getting a second robotics facility for a really Mondo strong army. And I think that this might have been the one issue with White-ra's play that really kind of cost him. By expanding here, we need to have an army that can bounce from here back into the main very quickly. If for some reason we took the Gold Expo and we had all our troops rallied here, if the main gets attacked, our Colossus goes zoop, and they just bounce up into the main, and we're in good shape. And then they can joink, snap back down here to low ground. We can easily come up here to the gold. I'm actually starting now to go, oh yeah, I guess the gold is slightly safer, regardless of the fact that it's gold, which is totally sweet. But I mean, that's pretty awesome to see that. But we're going to note how vulnerable this main really is. And White-rA accidentally forgets about this warp gate for a little while, but of course it eventually gets there. But notice how already, just looking at this mix, it feels tougher for for White-rA. I mean, picture last game, the way it was going. Picture how this +2 upgrade had just finished. Remember in last game how there was this Nidus worm that was up on our cliff. We killed it off. We moved out to this gold expansion, and it really felt right just to go kill Zerg, right? It didn't feel uncomfortable. Nothing felt vulnerable. And I want you to just look here on this screen. Think now about Protoss taking this army. Once the second Colossus finishes, just pretend that White-rA is going to take this army and move down here. I mean, just look at the mini-map. Look at this attack distance. Imagine if Protoss gets here, and all of a sudden there's a drop in his main, which is completely reasonable. Or there's Mutalisks in the main. This is such an awkward spot to be in as Protoss. And even if Protoss makes it farther down to here, where's the Protoss army? Well, it's right in the nest of Zerg. That's exactly where Zerg wants the Protoss to attack. So, I mean, very tough angle to work from. So, we need one of two things as White-rA. We need an army that's very good at defending. Like, for instance, we need to set up a ton of cannons here. Something like 4, 5, 6, 7 cannons in the main. Just a ton of cannons before we even consider attacking. And then as we attack, take our fourth. That's a great solution whenever we set up this super passive style, get a whole bunch of cannons, is we wait till we have an even bigger army and we take our fourth while we move out with that army. So look at White-rA trying to move in here. Notice now, even once White-rA's army is here, this expansion feels really naked too. Oh god, it's like out in the middle of nowhere. And White-rA went actually to expand here, and that's just like too much space to cover. Terrain is a lot bigger in StarCraft 2 when compared to StarCraft 1. For instance, in StarCraft 1, I mean, you could do something like, put 4 or 5 Zealots, 2 Cannons, and a Templar here, and this expansion was safe. Well, generally this ramp would be a little bit smaller, but I mean, for instance, if this was your ramp, you'd have 2 Zealots, 4 Cannons, and 1 Templar, and you would never get broken. But on this map, in StarCraft 2, you need like 70 food worth of an army to really block off this entrance. So, I mean, notice White-rA clearing this out. Cool, he cleared it out. Doesn't this main just feel vulnerable to you, just looking at it? Well, it should. I mean, it is. I mean, we do have a lot of Colossi coming out. That's cool, but this expanding pattern feels a little iffy to me. I like this because it's tighter. It's much tighter for our less mobile army. Even though Colossi can move up and down cliffs, they're a little bit slow and a little bit cumbersome. So you must thusly account for them. And I mean, look at this. Oh my god, look, a huge drop. Well, yeah, it was vulnerable, right? And then, oh my god, look, he's dropping back here, and I will go ahead and rewind. And then look, yeah, the Colossi pop up to the high ground, but then there's all these Corruptors, and we're trying to squeeze up there. Okay, we already lost our main. That's already unfortunate. And of course, look, White-rA already sent troops into the middle of the map to do a big counterattack. Super awesome. Now, let's pause here for just a moment. You heard me say, LOL, Sen has already popped in here to do a counterattack in mid. If this was our third base, anyways, it meant that our main army could have moved out to attack a lot earlier. So the threat of this is actually smaller by virtue of us being so damn aggressive, which you do want to be because it will make you win games and feel manly. And of course, who doesn't play Starcraft to grow a little hair on the chest? Except I've apparently I've been playing way too much Starcraft. I look a little bit Sasquatchish. So we have all the Colossi coming back in. I mean, now think about how strong White-rA's army is. Watch it come in here and obliterate everything it touches. And I mean, coming to this resource station, this really is a phenomenally strong army by White-rA. But it's the immobility of this army that's the problem. Oh yeah, cool, White-rA has this base up. He still is mining from 2 bases, and he's retaking this, and his +3 is almost done, and he can still constantly produce Colossi. Perfect. But he's getting whittled down by the fact that he always has to move around so damn much. So really, what changes can Sen make? Well, first of all, expanding here. Second of all, adding on more warp gates before choosing to expand. Just sticking, there's nothing wrong really with sticking to 2 bases for quite some time, so that way you can maximize your aggression. I think that one of the best examples of this is Iris in Starcraft 1, the Terran player. Iris is just great at like really getting like 7, 8, 9 racks on 2 bases and pummeling a Zerg to death. Or for a player for StarCraft 2, QXC, the American player, who of course goes to Harvey Mudd College. Yeah, Harvey Mudd fighting.